I never imagined coming home would feel like an eviction notice. My heart pounded as I stared at my 4 suitcases lined up on my front steps, under a churning sky, a single note pinned to the largest bag. If you want to stay here, use the garage. Love, Rachel. Follow my story to the end and comment the city you're watching from so I can see how far my journey reaches. At age 68, after 35 years in this house, I thought I knew betrayal until the rain began washing away my certainty, and I realized everything could change in a single heartbeat. I tugged at the wrought iron gate, but it wouldn't budge. The raindrops drummed on my shoulders as though mocking me. 35 years of memories lived here every birthday, every Christmas, every whispered conversation with Robert in the hallway. And now I was locked out watching droplets patter across my neatly painted porch. My hands trembled, not from the cold, but from the shock of it all. "Ma'am?" The taxi driver leaned over. "You okay?" I swallowed, blinking back tears. Yes, I need a moment." He nodded, pulling away tires hissing as he vanished down the street. I clasped the note tighter, Rachel's handwriting sharp, hurried, so unlike the warm cursive I taught her years ago. Use the garage. Those 4 words felt like a verdict. I fumbled for my cell phone. "Hello, Mrs. Monroe." The bank's automated voice felt surreal. "Your last mortgage payment of $1,900 posted Friday as scheduled." Relief glimmered for an instant, proof of my commitment, until I realized they'd taken it as permission to push me aside. A hollow ache filled my chest. I closed my eyes, picturing Robert's broad smile, the way he'd loop his arm through mine under our front awning. "We built this together," I whispered to the empty street. "We built this home." With shaking legs, I edged around the side of the house to the garage door. Sure enough, it was unlocked, another knife twist. Inside, a twin mattress lay against the far wall, movie posters removed, leaving bare concrete and fluorescent bulbs. My belongings sat in cardboard boxes labeled Mom's stuff. I slid down beside the mattress, rainwater seeping through my coat. "This can't be real," I murmured. My voice shook. I pictured Jack's face as a toddler scrunched with a sippy cup sleeping on my chest during one of his bad asthma nights. I'd stayed up until dawn praying for him, working a second job to pay his college fees, driving him and Emma back and forth every weekend, and now I was an inconvenience. My phone buzzed. A text from Jack. "Mom, we need the space. Rachel wants a home office. The garage has everything you need. Don't make this difficult." My breath caught. My son, my own flesh and blood, had turned on me. Don't make this difficult. As if I were the problem. Tears blurred my vision, warm and furious. I stood abruptly, knocking a box of family photos to the floor. Frames, shattered glass cutting into my slippered feet, but I didn't feel it. I dialed Linda, my oldest friend. On the first ring, her worried voice came through. "Helen, what's wrong? They've put me in the garage." There was a pause, then steel in her tone. "Sit tight. I'm on my way." 20 minutes later, Linda's Corolla pulled up. She didn't ask why. She just slid into the garage, boots splashing in puddles, and threw her arm around me. "We'll figure this out." I looked at her, rain matting her auburn hair to her cheeks. "I'm not done yet," I said, voice trembling, but resolute. She nodded. "Good. You're Helen Monroe. Don't write yourself off." The next morning, I followed Linda to her nephew's law office. Mason Wells didn't hide surprise at the damp stack of mortgage statements I'd brought. "You paid $4,500 or $600 over 2 years on a house you no longer own," he said flatly, eyes narrowing. "An equitable lien may apply." I blinked. I have options. More than you know, Mason replied. But first you confront them. Later, driving back to my own front drive, sunlight burned away the storm clouds. My carriage of tears had become a chariot of resolve. I parked in front of my house, smoothed my hair, and rang the bell. Rachel answered with a polite smile. Helen, what a surprise. Jack peeked from behind her, wiping his hands on a dish towel. Mom, I held up the mortgage statements. I stopped the payments. Their smiles faltered. Jack's face went pale. You can't do that. Oh, but I can, I said, stepping aside to enter. This is my home. Your new normal won't erase what I built. Rachel's eyes flashed. We'll see about that. Inside the house felt smaller, colder without my touch. But I carried heat in my veins, the heat of dignity reclaimed. The living room walls might bear fresh paint and modern art, but I was back. I stood tall, heart thudding with a mix of fear and triumph. For the first time in months, I felt the old spark of laughter of defiance of Helen Monroe, refusing to be erased. I stood in the foyer, chest heaving, as Jack's eyes shifted between me and Rachel. The echo of my own footsteps on the new hardwood felt foreign. My home had become their showcase. You've painted these walls without asking, I said, turning slowly to take in the sleek gray living room that once held our family photos. Rachel's lips tightened. We wanted a fresh start, she replied, voice cool. My fingers clenched. A fresh start that erased me. Jack swallowed sweat beading at his hairline. Mom, we need to talk about the lien. His words stumbled out awkwardly, as if he were apologizing and demanding at the same time. I lifted my chin. I've asked Mason to file it. Now every time you think of selling, you'll have to answer to me. He opened his mouth, then closed it. I felt a rush of something pity, relief, vindication roll through me. Rachel glanced away, smoothing the skirt of her designer dress. Their arrogance was dissolving drop by drop. When I left their house that afternoon, the spring air tasted like possibility. Linda was waiting at the curb, arms crossed, eyebrows raised in triumph. So she asked, sliding into the passenger seat. I exhaled. So they know I mean business? Linda grinned. And tomorrow, I'll drive you to the bank for that meeting with Trevor. I nodded, remembering his gentle eyes. The man who had first explained to me the power of an equitable lien over a cup of stale coffee in the branch lobby. Sunlight glimmered off the bank's front windows as Linda and I approached. Trevor Phillips stood by the entrance, clipboards in hand, looking every bit the professional banker. When our eyes met, relief seeped through his cautious smile. Helen, thank you for coming in, he said, guiding us to a private conference room. Linda hovered behind me, a shield of loyalty I'd never appreciated more. Trevor slid a folder across the table. I spoke with Jack this morning. He seemed unaware of how equitable liens work. My fingers traced the embossed logo on the folder. He thought stopping the payments would ruin my credit. Trevor shook his head. That would only happen if you did nothing. With this lien, you've asserted a legal interest. Now we need to formalize the arrangement so there's no confusion. I opened the folder to find paperwork I barely recognized as mine bank statements, the lien filing a draft of an agreement outlining my rights. Trevor explained each line patiently, his tone respectful. When he looked at me and said, "You have options," I felt tears sting the backs of my eyes. He wasn't patronizing me, he was empowering me. Leaving the bank, I felt lighter than I had in weeks. The weight of uncertainty had lifted. Linda grabbed my hand. Let's celebrate with pie. 2 hours later, I was seated at Rosie's Cafe, a place I'd driven past 100 times but never entered. The faded sign read, Rosie's home of the best pie in town. I traced the letters on the menu, heart fluttering. Linda winked. Try the cherry. The waitress who greeted us was young and bright-eyed, slipping into my chair without asking. "You're new here," she said, sliding a slice onto my plate. First day jitters, I laughed a genuine sound that surprised me. Something like that. "Then I'll have—" I hesitated the apple. Linda clapped her hands softly. "Helen Monroe, tracker of mortgages and baker of hope starting fresh." I almost choked on a laugh, but instead, I thanked her and focused on the pie's sweet tang. That evening, I unclipped the job application I'd filled out. It shimmered with possibility. I'd told Mason I was ready to really work for myself again. Waiting tables would pay the bills and restore something I'd lost independence. As I tucked the application into my purse, my phone buzzed. A text from Jack. "We need to talk ASAP." I stared at the screen, thumb hovering over delete. But I couldn't. I tapped out a reply. "Not tonight. We'll talk when I'm ready." My first shift at Rosie's was chaos and magic all at once. The bell over the door jingled relentlessly. Orders flew in like birds darting for breadcrumbs. I wore a crisp apron that smelled of bleach and coffee. Hands shaking, I took orders, balanced plates, counted change, and carried steaming mugs. I tripped over my own feet at least twice, sending a wave of sympathy from the counter staff. But each time I steadied myself, a thrill pulsed through my veins. This was my own path carved by my own effort. During a lull, I slipped outside for a break. Linda called and her voice crackled with pride. "How's my girl doing?" I cradled a cup of lukewarm coffee. "Alive," I said, smiling at the empty parking lot. "More than alive. I feel needed." She laughed. "That's the Helen I know." 2 weeks later, Mason arranged another meeting. This time, he met me at his downtown office walls lined with law books and mugs proclaiming justice never sleeps. He leaned back, hands steepled. "Your lien is solid. Jack and Rachel will have to pay off the mortgage you've covered before they can sell or refinance." I closed my eyes. "It feels surreal." Mason nodded. "It took courage. Most people in your position would walk away." I thought of the boxes in that dank garage. I thought of the dinner table where I'd once laughed with my family. "I'm not most people," I said softly. That night I returned to the house to gather the last of my things. With Linda by my side, I carried photo albums. My grandmother's china, Robert's fishing rod, each item a thread connecting me to the life I'd built. Rachel appeared at the door, arms crossed. "I see you're taking everything." Her tone dripped contempt. I paused, turning slowly. Moonlight danced on the pale walls. "I'm taking home what's mine," I said. Without another word, I closed the trunk of my car and drove away, headlights cutting through the darkness. Back at Rosie's, I found solace in the clatter of dishes and the murmur of conversation. A regular named Mr. Harris tipped me an extra $1 for remembering his usual order. I pressed it into my palm, warmth spreading through me. That single $1 felt like a declaration. Later, I sank onto my couch in Linda's guest room, legs aching from a day's work. I turned off the lamp and stared at the ceiling, imagining tulip bulbs pushing through spring's thawing soil in my own garden. This house, this life was being reborn piece by piece. I drifted to sleep with a quiet conviction humming in my chest. I was no longer a ghost in my own story. I was the author, pen in hand, ready to write my next chapter. When I woke the next morning, sunlight filtered through the blinds of Linda's guest room, painting warm stripes across my face. My body still ached from the day before Sunset Motel cardboard mattress be damned, but my spirit felt buoyant. Over coffee in the kitchen, Linda pressed a slice of leftover pie into my hand. "Today's the meeting with Brian," she reminded me. My throat tightened at the thought of stepping back into that office, but I nodded. "I'm ready." I smoothed the collar of the blouse I had borrowed from Martha and slid into the passenger seat of Linda's car. The world hummed around me as we drove downtown, the skyline gleaming with promise. Brian's office was on the fourth floor of an unassuming brick building. Law books lined the shelves, certificates framed on the wall, and a mahogany desk that seemed to smell of ink and resolve. "Good morning, Mrs. Monroe," Brian said, rising from behind the desk. His smile was welcoming, but businesslike. At my side, Linda gave a quick thumbs up. Brian cleared his throat. "I've drafted the agreement outlining your terms for lifting the lien." He slid 2 copies across the desk. I inhaled, fingers grazing the paper. The words were simple. Helen Monroe would resume mortgage payments only under the condition that the sale of the property be exclusively to her at the exact amount she had contributed over the past 2 years, plus any improvements she funded. Rachel's face flashed into my mind, her arched brow, the practiced politeness that had vanished the moment I stopped paying. I glanced at Linda, whose encouraging nod bolstered my confidence. "This is fair," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. Our home shouldn't belong to strangers when I've been the one keeping the roof over their heads." Brian's pen tapped against the desk. "If Jack and Rachel agree, we will file the necessary documents. Otherwise, we proceed to court." He looked to me, eyes sharp. "Are you prepared for that?" My pulse fluttered, but I nodded. "I am." The front door opened, and Jack and Rachel stepped in together. Jack's shoulders were slumped. Rachel's heels clicked on the hardwood. Their eyes darted to Linda as if expecting her to intervene. Instead, I stood heart-drumming. "Thank you both for coming," I said, smoothing the papers into neat folds. Jack swallowed, voice barely above a whisper. "Mom, this lien, it's causing problems. We're getting calls from the bank." I pressed a finger to the agreement. "Here's the solution. You sell to me. I pay you back every penny I've invested. Then you're free to move on." Rachel's lip curled. "But that house is worth far more than you've paid." I met her glare head on. "It's worth exactly what I've put into it, Rachel. 35 years of love labor and mortgage payments." Jack shifted uncomfortably, eyes downcast. He opened his mouth, then closed it. Finally, he nodded. We accept." Relief washed through me like summer rain. Brian slid the pen across. Jack picked it up, hesitated, then signed. Rachel followed suit, her handwriting tight and small. Driving away, I felt light, as if someone had lifted a weight from my shoulders. Linda reached across and squeezed my hand. "You did it." My breath caught. We did it. The closing took all of 2 weeks. During that time, I juggled shifts at Rosie's Cafe with meetings at the courthouse. I learned to navigate stacks of legal forms, sipping lukewarm coffee in the waiting area, chatting with clerks who became rooting fans of my fight for home. When the final papers were signed, I held the new deed in trembling hands. My name stood alone in bold print. Helen Monroe, owner once more. Returning to the house was like stepping back into my own skin. The paint still gleamed in Rachel's modern grays, but I carried a bucket of warm yellow and rich blue that very afternoon. Each stroke of the brush felt like reclaiming a piece of my soul. I rehung the framed family photos on the mantel, carefully restoring their positions. In the den, I dusted off Robert's fishing rod and propped it against the wall. The den window caught the afternoon sun, illuminating specks of dust that danced like motes of memory. My first night back, I cooked a simple dinner: roast chicken with herbs, mashed potatoes, and green beans. The aromas wove through the kitchen, filling every corner. I set a single place at the table, lit a candle in Robert's brass holder, and offered a silent toast to new beginnings. I ate slowly, savoring each bite, feeling the warmth of home settle around me like a blanket. Over the next week, I returned to the real work of rebuilding my life. I trimmed dead branches from the rose bushes, planted tulip bulbs in the front garden, and unpacked the last of my boxes. Neighbors waved as I passed, offering smiles and words of encouragement. Each nod felt like a stitch in a mended quilt, weaving me back into the fabric of this neighborhood. One Saturday afternoon, as I knelt in the garden, a familiar car pulled up. I brushed dirt from my hands and stood chest tightening as Jack climbed out. His suit was rumpled tie, loosened at the collar, his expensive loafers dusted by my freshly tilled soil. He approached slowly, gaze fixed on the rows of tulip bulbs I'd planted. "They're beautiful," he said finally. His voice lacked its old confidence, replaced by something humble. "Dad loved tulips," I replied, smoothing the soil around a bulb. "He planted them every fall." I paused, meeting Jack's eyes. "What brings you here?" He hesitated, shifting from foot to foot. We didn't get the house in Oakwood Hills." Guilt flickered across his face. "Our credit was too damaged. We found an apartment. It's small, but it's a start." I nodded, heart softening. "I'm sorry to hear that." He swallowed. "Rachel's expecting." My breath caught. "That's wonderful news." His shoulders slumped in relief, but something else trembled in his eyes. Recognition, perhaps, of what he'd lost. "Emma asks about you," he said quietly. "She says Grandma Helen shouldn't be in a garage." A sharp pang lanced through me. I knelt beside the tulip bed and ran a hand through the soil, gathering grit under my nails. "She's welcome anytime," I said. Jack nodded, stepping closer. For a moment, father and son stood in the garden, the quiet between us filled with unspoken regrets and a flicker of hope. Later that evening, I sat on the porch swing as dusk settled. The house glowed behind me, every window a beacon of reclaimed warmth. Linda and Mason had dropped by earlier, leaving a pot of soup and a bottle of wine on the counter, a quiet celebration of what I had achieved. I listened to the soft creak of the porch boards, the faint hum of traffic down the street, and felt the last of my unease dissolve into the summer air. The garden stretched before me, a promise of blooms to come, and I realized that this house, this life, was truly mine again. The morning sunlight felt gentle as it filtered through my bedroom curtains, but inside, my heart thrummed with restless energy. I lingered over a cup of coffee in the kitchen, the steam warming my hands as I listened to the familiar hum of neighborhood life. Birds chirped in the newly planted tulips, and somewhere down the street, Mr. Harris's mail truck clattered along. It was a peaceful scene, so peaceful it made the letters I'd find on the welcome mat feel all the more alarming. One envelope crisp and official notice from the city arborist. A large oak branch overhung my roof and posed a danger. They'd schedule its removal within the week. I closed my eyes, remembering Robert's meticulous pruning every fall. That tree had been his pride. Now it threatened everything I'd fought so hard to reclaim. My breath caught. This felt like another test. I dialed Mason's number and held the phone with trembling fingers. When he answered, I blurted, "There's a branch. They're coming to cut it down." His calm voice settled me. "City takes responsibility, Helen. But if you'd rather handle it yourself, I know a reputable arborist." I looked out at the towering oak, its limbs brushing the roofline. "I'd rather do it myself," I said, surprising even me. "Robert's tree deserves my care." An hour later, I was outside with a ladder and pruning shears borrowed from the neighbor. Linda and Mason showed up, tools in hand. As Linda handed me a safety harness, she teased, "Look at you taking on Mother Nature." I managed a grin. If I could install a lean, I can prune a tree. We worked side by side, the sun climbing higher as I clipped away dead limbs, each snip feeling like I was cutting free old fears. When the last branch landed in a neat pile, I stepped back and surveyed the house. The roof looked safe, the tree restored to its elegant form. A sense of triumph coursed through me. That afternoon, I returned to Rosie's Cafe for a double shift. The familiar chaos of orders and laughter soothed my nerves. Midway through the lunch rush, the door chimed, and I glanced up. Jack stood there, phone in hand, eyes wide, as he took in the apron the commotion the regulars waving at me. He ducked behind the hostess stand as if trying to disappear. My chest tightened. I finished the order I was taking, then walked over to him, plating cherry pie with a flourish. "Here's your pie," I offered, voice light. He blinked. "You remembered." I tilted the plate so he could see the crumb art I'd traced in the sauce. He smiled tentatively and took the slice sitting at the edge of the counter. "I came to say thanks," he said, voice small, "for everything." My breath caught, did that. Include the lean, the paint, the job. He ran a hand through his hair. I realized I was wrong. I've been so focused on what I wanted, I forgot what mattered. I met his gaze and nodded. "You're here now." He glanced down at his pie, then back at me. "Can I help?" I laughed softly. "Sure, dish duty." He winced but stood and grabbed a cloth. Together, we wiped down tables and refilled sugar containers, the clatter of plates punctuating our unspoken understanding. When he slipped away to the back, I felt more hopeful than I had in weeks. That evening, I returned home to find Rachel on the porch, Emma in her arms. The porch light cast a warm glow as Emma toddled toward me wide-eyed. "Grandma Helen!" she squealed, clambering up to hug my legs. My heart swelled as I lifted her into my arms. Rachel's eyes were glossy, vulnerable. "She's been asking about you," Rachel said, voice soft. I'm sorry." The apology hung between us like fragile glass. I looked down at Emma's sandy hair, the way her small hands curled around my blouse. "She's welcome any time," I said. Rachel blinked, nodding. Emma looked up at me with solemn curiosity. "Play." I smiled and set her down, holding out my hand. She took it, and we crossed the threshold together. Inside, I guided Emma to the little reading nook I'd reinstalled in the sunroom, a cozy corner with soft pillows and her favorite picture books. She crawled into my lap, thumb in mouth, as I read about curious cats and sleepy bears. Rachel stood in the doorway, arms folded, but she didn't leave. When I closed the book, Emma reached for my face and planted a sloppy kiss on my cheek. I laughed, tears threatening. Rachel exhaled, trembling. "Thank you," she whispered. I placed Emma gently on the floor. "She's a wonderful girl." For a moment, Rachel stepped forward, then hesitated. "I know I hurt you. I thought I was protecting my family, but I see now. I lost sight of what family means." That admission was a crack in the wall between us. I reached out, placing a hand on her arm. "We both made mistakes," I said. "Now we get to build better ones." She nodded, eyes glistening. Emma toddled over and grabbed both our hands, leading us to the center of the room, where the afternoon light danced on the hardwood. It felt like a silent blessing. Later, I walked back to the porch, Rachel and Emma trailing behind. I poured tea into 3 mugs, one for Rachel, one for me, and a small sippy cup filled with warm milk for Emma. We settled on the swing, the night air cool against our cheeks. Emma dozed in Rachel's arms, lulled by the gentle rocking. Rachel wrapped an arm around Emma and leaned her head on my shoulder. "I'm glad you're home," she said, quiet enough for only me to hear. I closed my eyes, the scent of jasmine from the garden drifting through the screen door. The oak tree stood sentinel above us, its branches safe and pruned. My home, these walls, these rooms. This family was finally whole again. And as the moon cast silver light over the tulips and the porch swing, I realized that reclaiming my house had led me back to something far more precious, the love that had always lived within it. Sunlight spilled through the kitchen window as I prepared breakfast, scrambled eggs, toast, and fresh fruit from the farmer's market on Main Street. Emma sat in her high chair, hair tousled, cheeks pink from yesterday's tears of happiness. Rachel hovered nearby, wiping a crumb from Emma's sleeve. Jack stood at the counter, buttering his toast with a look of quiet concentration. An unfamiliar peace settled over us. "Mom, this is really good," Jack said, breaking the comfortable silence. He took a bite and closed his eyes. "Better than any restaurant." I smiled, a warmth blooming in my chest. "It's just home cooking," I replied, flipping an egg. The sizzle of butter and the golden yellow of the yolk felt like a celebration of normalcy. Emma reached for my hand, babbling in baby talk that sounded something like gratitude. Rachel laughed, a genuine sound that bubbled up from her ribs. I caught her eye and nodded. "Help me clear the table," I asked Jack, handing him a stack of plates. He stood, muscles tense for a moment, then relaxed as he cradled the dishes. I caught his hand on mine as he passed the plates, a silent acknowledgement of our fragile truce. Later that morning, I ventured into the front yard to tend to the rose bushes. The air smelled of damp earth and blossoms. Neighbors waved from their driveways. Mrs. Patel offered a basket of freshly baked muffins, which I gratefully accepted. "Welcome back," she said, patting my shoulder. I realized I hadn't just reclaimed a house, I'd reclaimed my place in this community. As I pruned the wilted petals, Jack joined me outside, leaning on the wrought iron fence. "Can we talk?" he asked, eyes earnest. My heart thudded. I set down the pruning shears. "Of course." He took a deep breath. "About me and Dad's legacy. I've been thinking about what you said about not erasing your life, Dad's memory." His gaze drifted to the bay window where Robert and I had danced at our anniversary. "I want to honor this place, Mom, not just live in it." Tears stung my eyes. "That means more to me than you know," I whispered. He ran a hand through his hair. "I'd like to learn how to garden." "Would you teach me?" I laughed, the sound bright. "I'd love to." When he helped me kneel by the rose bed and showed him how to trim the dead wood, I felt a renewal, not just of flowers, but of our bond. Later that afternoon, Rosie's Cafe hummed with afternoon patrons. I'd reached a rhythm at work, the hiss of the espresso machine, the clink of ceramic mugs, the banter with regulars. The manager, Tom, slid me a paycheck with a nod. "We're lucky to have you," he said. I tucked the envelope into my apron pocket, my independence literally in my hands. On my way home, I stopped by the bank. Trevor Phillips greeted me with that same gentle respect. He handed me a revised mortgage statement reflecting my resumed payments under the new agreement. "Everything's in order," he said. Relief settled over me like a soft blanket. "Thank you," I replied, "for believing in me." Evening fell, and the house settled into quiet comfort. I lit candles on the dining table, lavender-scented, and set out the china my grandmother had passed down. Jack and Rachel joined me, Emma snug between them in her booster seat. We shared pasta and salad laughter, punctuating our conversation. At one point, Emma clapped her hands and knocked over a glass of water. Rachel swooped in to catch her, and Jack reached to steady my arm. We all burst into laughter, a symphony of imperfection. After dinner, Jack excused himself, saying he needed to check on work emails. I watched him retreat down the hallway, a flicker of the old protective father in his posture. It felt good to see him step back into his role not as a despotic homeowner, but as a son who cared. Rachel helped me clear the dishes. I'm thinking of repainting the guest room, she said tentatively. Something lighter. Maybe pale green. I considered the blank wall and smiled. I'd love to see your ideas. This house should feel like all of us. She looked relieved, and I realized our family had room for new chapters. That night after Emma was asleep, Jack knocked on my bedroom door. He stood in the dim hallway, shoulders a little slumped. "Can I sit?" Without waiting, I patted the edge of the bed. He sat, turning his wedding band around his finger. I wanted to say, "I'm proud of you. What you've done, it took courage. I'm sorry I didn't see it sooner." My throat tightened. "Thank you," I said, voice trembling. He looked at me, eyes clear. "I want to be better for you, for Emma, for us." I reached out and squeezed his hand. "We already are." The next morning, I found a note on the kitchen counter in Rachel's careful handwriting. "Brunch at 11. I'll make pancakes. Love, R." My heart fluttered. I poured coffee and sat at the table, imagining the laughter we'd share. Outside, the tulips I planted peeked through the soil, tiny green shoots promising full blooms in a few weeks. I stood and walked to the living room where the sunlight caught the family photos on the mantel. Robert's smiling face looked back at me from a framed portrait taken on our wedding day. I ran a fingertip over the glass, whispering, "Thank you for this life." Then I turned to the front window where Jack and Rachel rolled up their sleeves in the garden, Emily toddling after them with a plastic watering can. My breath caught at the sight, 3 generations tending to the home we loved. A sense of peace settled deep in my bones. The house wasn't just walls and a roof anymore. It was the living heart of our family's story. As I watched them, I knew that reclaiming my home had healed something far greater than property rights. It had healed relationships, restored memories, and planted seeds of hope for our future. And in that moment, I realized that home isn't just where you live, it's where you grow together. Early morning sunlight filtered through the lace curtains as I prepared a pot of coffee, the rich aroma filling the kitchen. The house felt alive with possibility. Emma's laughter from the living room, Jack's distant footsteps above, and the gentle hum of the garden waking outside. I poured steaming coffee into my favorite mug, the one Robert had given me on our 25th anniversary, and carried it to the breakfast nook, where Rachel had already spread a simple spread of pancakes, fresh berries, and maple syrup, glistening like golden honey. "Good morning," Rachel said, flashing a genuine smile that reached her eyes. Emma toddled over in her little slippers, eyes wide and hair tousled, and climbed into her booster seat. Jack joined us moments later. Ty loosened, running his hand through his hair as he sank into his chair. We all paused, taking in the moment, a family whole, again sharing breakfast in a home reborn. I lifted my mug. "To second chances," I said, and we all echoed, "To second chances." The clink of mugs punctuated the promise. I traced the rim with my thumb, savoring the warmth and the peace that had felt so distant just weeks ago. After breakfast, Jack offered to help wash dishes. I lingered at the sink, warm water cascading over my hands, and watched him scrub the pancake's syrup off the plates with focused care. I remembered a time when he'd been a toddler at my side trying to help me rinse dishes after dinner, splashing water everywhere. He chuckled as he flicked a bit of sudsy water at me now, and I couldn't help but laugh. That small, playful moment was a reminder that the father I loved was still there under the weight of mistakes and pride waiting to be rediscovered. Once the kitchen was tidy, Rachel invited me to the sunroom. She'd set up a small table with art supplies for Emma crayons, paper, and a picture book I used to read to her months ago. We settled around the table. Emma scribbled with enthusiastic abandon, while Rachel and I sipped tea. The afternoon sunlight spilled across the polished hardwood, illuminating dust motes that danced like fireflies. "Your garden is thriving," Rachel said, nodding toward the window where rows of tulip shoots peeked through the soil. "Those bulbs you planted are going to be stunning." I smiled, feeling a surge of pride. "I can't wait to see them bloom," I replied. "It's amazing what a little care and patience can do." Her gaze softened. "Thank you for letting me be part of this again." Her words felt heartfelt, a healing balm to the wounds we'd inflicted on each other. Later, I slipped out to the backyard to check on the rose bushes. The early afternoon sun was warm on my back as I knelt in the rich earth, gently coaxing the buds into bloom. Neighbors strolled by, waving and offering warm greetings. Mr. Lee from next door paused, tipping his hat. "The place looks spectacular," he said. "Your touch really makes this street shine." I nodded gratefully. "It's home," I answered, simply closing the spade and brushing dirt from my gloves. Inside, the clock ticked toward evening, and I prepared for my shift at Rosie's Cafe. The thought of another handful of hours balancing plates and lattes felt comforting now, a routine I'd chosen rather than one forced upon me. I slipped into my uniform and tied on my apron, fastening the name tag that read Helen. I caught my reflection in the mirror, silver hair, pulled back bright eyes, and a posture straight with purpose. I smiled at myself. Helen Monroe, survivor champion, and waitress extraordinaire. At the cafe, the lunchtime rush had given way to a lull. I balanced a tray of iced teas and lemonade weaving through tables with practiced ease. A familiar face, Mrs. Thompson, waved from a corner booth. "You're back in your element," she said. I set down her drink and sat for a moment in the empty chair opposite her. "I've missed this," I admitted. "Helping people, being useful." She patted my hand. "You're doing more than that. You're inspiring everyone who hears your story." I shook my head, touched. "I'm just being me." That evening, I returned home to find Jack waiting on the front porch, phone in hand. His expression was serious, something like determination tempered by worry. "Mom, can we talk?" he asked. I nodded and led him to the porch swing. The soft creak under our weight filled the silence. He passed me his phone, showing an email from his firm he'd been offered a partnership, effective immediately. "Congratulations," messages filled the thread, but there was one from his boss. "Please confirm you've settled your personal affairs to focus on this role." Jack's face was tight with conflict. "They're saying I need stability. I think I'm ready to put down roots here," he said quietly. "But I'm afraid this house, our family, might be too much baggage." I looked at him, chest tightening. "Jack, your roots are here, always were. This house, these memories, they're part of who you are. Baggage doesn't define you, it shapes you." His shoulders relaxed slightly, relief flickering in his eyes. "You really think so?" I reached out and squeezed his hand. "I know so." Inside, Rachel greeted us with dinner simmering on the stove, spaghetti with homemade marinara and garlic bread. Emma twirled in her high-chair hands, reaching for the flying strands of pasta I lifted off my plate for her. The aroma of tomatoes and basil swirled around us as Jack and I settled at the table. He served himself carefully, his movements deliberate, as if anchoring himself here for good. As we ate, the conversation flowed easily. Plans for the weekend, the upcoming book club meeting that Rachel had invited me to host, and a suggestion from Jack that we finally have a family movie night in the living room. I watched them plate in hand, feeling a swell of gratitude. The scars of betrayal were fading, replaced by threads of trust being rewoven. Later, after the dishes were done and Emma was asleep, I found Rachel in the sunroom, rearranging the cushions on the window seat. She smiled when I entered. "I've been thinking," she said, "about hosting a housewarming party. Inviting friends, neighbors, your whole community." My heart fluttered at the idea. I'd love that, I said. She hesitated, then reached out. I want to help you celebrate Mom. I crossed the room and hugged her. Thank you, Rachel. For everything. Night settled softly over the neighborhood as I stepped onto the porch, a cool breeze rustling the tulip leaves. I glanced up at the oak tree, its pruned limbs safe and strong against the starry sky. Inside, the light spilled from the windows warm and inviting. In that moment, I understood that home wasn't just a building, it was the people who filled it, the love that sustained it, and the hope that grew within its walls. And as I closed the door behind me, I felt the quiet certainty that this was just the beginning of our next chapter 1, written together with every heart beating in unison. The morning of the housewarming sunlight danced across the kitchen floor as I set out platters of sandwiches, cheese trays, and his grandmother's vintage punch bowl filled with strawberry lemonade. Rachel hovered by the table, fluffing napkins like a maitre d', while Jack tapped his phone, confirming arrival times. I took a breath. Heart fluttering with excitement and nerves, this was our collective debut, a celebration of healing and new beginnings. Mom, the neighborhood association is sending a camera crew, Jack said, looking up from his phone. His tone was a mix of pride and hesitation. They want to feature your story in next week's community spotlight. I paused, spatula in hand. A camera crew. My pulse quickened. Oh. Rachel's eyes widened behind me. That's sooner than I expected. She ran a hand through her hair. Are you okay with it? I turned to face her, warmth spreading through my chest. If our story can inspire others, yes. Rachel exhaled, nodding relief, mingling with lingering worry. By late afternoon, the front yard hummed with activity. Linda and Mason arrived, first arms full of potted flowers to line the walkway. Thought you might need some extra color, Linda said, arranging bright marigolds in clay pots. Mason unpacked a stack of framed photos Robert and me on our wedding day. Baby Jack in my arms, Emma toddling in the rose garden. He propped them along the porch rails. Reminders of the journey, he said quietly. I felt tears prickle my eyes. Thank you, I whispered. Across the street, Rosie from the cafe rolled up in her minivan, loaded with homemade pies and cookies. Mr. Harris wheeled his famous pecan bars in on a folding cart. Mrs. Patel brought more muffins, and Mr. Lee contributed his renowned lemon bars. Neighbors drifted over, greeting one another, and admiring the house's fresh coat of warm yellow paint, the cheerful blues in the window boxes. Just as the sun dipped low, the community's local Access TV reporter arrived, camera crew in tow. A lanky young man introduced himself as Daniel and explained they'd like to film a short segment outdoors before guests poured in. My stomach fluttered with butterflies as bright lights and microphones appeared, but I squared my shoulders. Jack and Rachel stood behind me, offering silent solidarity. Daniel's voice boomed gently into the lens. We're here today at the Monroe residence where Helen Monroe reclaimed her home after an epic journey of resilience. Helen, tell us how it feels to stand here again as the rightful owner. I took a deep breath, the evening air warm on my face. It feels like I'm finally breathing again, I said, voice steady but warm. This isn't just a house, it's the keeper of our family's memories, hard-earned love and sacrifice. If my experience encourages even one person to stand up for what's theirs, then sharing it is worth any spotlight. The reporter nodded, then turned the camera toward Jack and Rachel. And what does it feel like to welcome your mother and grandmother back into the heart of the home? Jack exchanged a glance with Rachel. He stepped forward, voice earnest. It's a humbling reminder of the values she instilled in us. Selflessness, perseverance, and family above all. Rachel reached out to tuck a stray strand of hair behind Emma's ear. We're proud to have her leading us now, she added softly. With the formalities wrapped, guests moved into the yard under strings of white lights. I drifted among them, greeting friends and neighbors, laughing at stories of spilled punch and over-baked cookies, savoring the lively hum of conversation. Linda joined me, raising her glass. To Helen Monroe, our guiding star, she toasted. The clink of glass echoed, and I lifted my own. To family, I responded, scanning the crowd. Familiar faces smiling back, the oak tree standing sentinel overhead, its pruned limbs reaching skyward as if applauding our triumph. Dinner tables were laden with potluck dishes. Emma toddled from lap to lap, offering sticky kisses and squeals of delight. Jack and Rachel followed her, exchanging warm smiles that spoke volumes of the bond we'd rebuilt. When a neighbor asked about the legal process, I explained equitably and simply, winking at Mason, who stood discreetly behind me. Their applause felt like a benediction. As twilight deepened, the reporter stealthily captured candid moments: Rosie laughing with Mr. Harris over pie crumbs, Mrs. Patel teaching Emma to mumble thank you in her gentle accent, Jack showing me how to fold a napkin into a rose. When he panned back to me, I caught my reflection in the lens, silver hair glowing, warm eyes shining, and realized I'd never felt more myself. Suddenly, an unexpected clap of thunder rolled across the sky. The string lights swayed lightly in the breeze. A few guests laughed nervously, but I stepped forward. "Don't worry, just a passing storm," I called, voice carrying. Rachel hurried to secure the buffet tents. Jack helped her and neighbors pitched in. In moments, the wind died, and only faint clouds drifted overhead. A collective sigh of relief rippled through the yard. That small storm felt symbolic, a reminder that life's tests can be sudden, but with unity and resolve, we weather them. As the first raindrops splashed on the pavement, I grabbed a dish towel and dashed out, patting down the buffet tables. Neighbors appeared at their umbrellas, eager to help. Laughter broke the tension as someone quipped, "At least it's not monsoon season." Inside the porch, the camera crew retreated, satisfied with their footage. Daniel approached me, smiling. "Thank you for opening your home and heart to us," he said. I nodded, brushing hair from my face. "Thank you for telling our story." He offered a small card. "If you ever need copies of the segment, let me know." I tucked it into my apron pocket, feeling a quiet pride. Once the last guest departed, muffin crumbs swept away, empty punch bowl stored. I stood on the porch with Jack and Rachel. Emma yawned in Rachel's arms, drifting to sleep. The yard was hushed, bathed in moonlight. I slipped an arm around my daughter-in-law's shoulders, and Jack draped a hand across my back. Together, we stood under the oak tree roots' intertwined branches reaching upward. "I never thought a house could bring so many people together," Rachel whispered. I nodded, eyes on the moonlit tulip shoots at our feet. "It's more than bricks and mortar. It's the moments, stormy and calm, that shape us." Jack smiled, stepping closer. "Thank you for sharing those moments with us." In that soft hush, I realized the housewarming wasn't an end point. It was a milestone on an ongoing journey of love, forgiveness, and community. The house stood firm around us, its walls holding echoes of the past and promises of the future. And as we lingered on the porch, the air alive with possibility, I knew this home would continue to witness our story. One we would write together, one unforgettable chapter at a time. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the lace curtains as I brewed my first pot of coffee since the housewarming. The air held the promise of late spring jasmine from the garden, mingling with the warmth of the kitchen. I poured myself a mug and carried it to the back porch, where Jack was already leaning on the railing, phone pressed to his ear. I stepped onto the porch, the wooden boards creaking under my slippers. He ended his call and slipped the phone into his pocket. Mom, he said, voice tight, but excited. That was Mitchell and Company. They're offering me a partnership in New York. My chest stuttered. New York, the city that never sleeps. The place Jack had always dreamed of, working away from local politics of mortgages and community spotlights. I set my coffee down, surprised to find my hands trembling. A partnership that's wonderful, Jack. He nodded, tugging at the collar of his shirt. It's a huge opportunity. The firm there has offices in 5 boroughs and works with some of the biggest clients in the country. They want me to start in 2 months. I closed my eyes, recalling the tulip's shoots pushing through the soil, the laughter of neighbors under our oak tree, the fragile peace we'd fought so hard to restore. If Jack left, would that peace fracture? 2 months is soon, I said, voice softer than I intended. What does Rachel think? He ran a hand through his hair, and I saw the tension ripple through his shoulders. We talked last night. She's torn. She loves her book club here. Emma's preschools are just a block away, and she's pregnant again. But she knows I can't pass this up. He looked at me, doubt in his eyes. Mom, do you think we'd be making a mistake leaving? I took his hand, warm against mine. I think opportunities like this don't come often. You've earned it. My voice cracked on the last word. Go. He squeezed my hand, relief and guilt warring on his face. Thank you. Inside, Rachel joined us folding laundry at the kitchen island. Emma toddled around her legs, carrying a stuffed bear. Rachel placed a gentle hand on Jack's arm. It's what we dreamed of, she said, voice firm. But I worry about uprooting Emma so soon. She knelt to lift Emma into her lap. She loves this yard. I poured her a cup of tea and slipped it across the counter. Change is hard, I told her, but love carries us through. If this is your path, you won't lose this home or us. Rachel met my gaze, gratitude shining in her eyes. You'd be okay if we moved. I glanced toward the back window where the garden bloomed in riotous color thanks to everyone's help. This house is ours forever, I said. But your life, it's yours to shape. Jack exhaled, and I saw the tension ease in his jaw. Emma reached for my tea, and I offered her the handle. Her small fingers wrapped around it, and the 3 of us shared a smile that held more promise than words. Over the next week, we toured neighborhoods in New York via video calls. Jack showed us sleek high-rises, tree-lined brownstones, and small parks where Emma could play. Rachel found a boutique preschool with art classes and parent workshops. I watched them plan their future, a bittersweet swell in my chest. I imagined my grandchildren growing up under skyscrapers, and I knew I'd miss the creak of my own staircase. One evening after dinner, I suggested we sit in the sunroom. I brought out a stack of family albums, wedding pictures, baby Jack in a bonnet, Emma's first steps. We passed the albums around, laughing at striped socks and oversized bows. When the last photo of the tulip garden appeared, Jack traced the petals with his finger. Mom, you built all this, he said quietly. I don't want to lose it. I smiled, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. You won't. We'll keep this house. Consider it your anchor. Jack tilted his head. An anchor, I nodded. Homes are like roots. Sometimes you travel far, but you need roots to come home to. I leaned forward, fingertips touching the photo's edges. You can rent a place in New York or find a pied-à-terre. This house stays in the family. Your kids will know it as home no matter where you are. Silence settled over us. Not uncomfortable, but full of understanding. Rachel squeezed my shoulder. We could take turns, she said. Spend summers here with Emma and the baby and the rest of the year in New York. Emma babbled in agreement, and we all laughed. Okay, Jack said, voice resolute. We'll do that. The The next morning, I called Trevor at the bank to discuss converting the home's mortgage into a multi-owner agreement, anticipating our new arrangement. He guided me through the paperwork with his usual patience. "It's a smart move, Mrs. Monroe," he said. "Keeps the house secure for all involved." I thanked him and hung up feeling a surge of confidence. I drove past Rosie's cafe later that afternoon and waved at Tom, the manager, who was hanging a "Congratulations, Helen" banner inside. The staff cheered as I walked in offering a free slice of lemon bar. I laughed and waved them off. "Just coffee, thanks." On my way home, I stopped by the community center to confirm my speaking engagement on elder rights and property law. The director, Ms. Alvarez, clasped my hand warmly. "Your story is inspiring. We want everyone to hear it." I agreed and left with a flurry of pamphlets and schedules. When I stepped back into the afternoon sun, I realized my life was fuller than I'd ever imagined work, family, community. That evening, Jack and Rachel invited me to New York via FaceTime. Emma crawled onto the screen, waving a crayon. Rachel beamed. "Welcome to our new apartment," she said, panning the camera across a cozy living room filled with cardboard boxes and half-assembled furniture. Jack held a miniature model of an office building. "This is your future office," he grinned. Emma knocked the model over and giggled, and they both laughed. I felt tears prickle my eyes. I blew a kiss to Emma and whispered, "I'll see you soon, pumpkin." Then I turned to the garden visible behind me, tulips nodding in the breeze. "Remember I told Jack roots before wings?" He nodded, and Rachel placed a hand over her heart. After we hung up, I walked through the living room past framed photos and the soft glow of the oak tree's silhouette against the sky, and I realized home was no longer just a place. It was a promise that no matter where the winds of life carried us, we would always have a place to return. And with that certainty warming me like a second sunrise, I felt ready for whatever came next. The morning I woke to the sound of cicadas, the heat of early summer already thick in the air. I stretched in bed listening to the hum of an air conditioner I'd thoughtfully installed on the porch. It made the swing a sanctuary when the outside world felt too hot or too busy. Today, I was expecting Jack, Rachel, and the children for their first summer visit routes before wings, as we'd agreed. Before I descended the stairs, I smoothed my nightgown and whispered a quick thank you to Robert's portrait by the fireplace. In the kitchen, I arranged a pitcher of iced tea, fresh slices of lemon floating like tiny suns, and a platter of cucumber sandwiches. Beside them, I placed a small cake vanilla with strawberry frosting, Emma's favorite. The table on the porch was set with pastel napkins and a small vase of marigolds from my garden. My heart fluttered with anticipation. Today was our chance to weave our separate lives back together under one roof. A car rolled down the street, and through the screen door, I spotted Rachel guiding a squirming Emma and their newborn Lily into Jack's arms. He beamed in a lightweight linen shirt, sweat glistening beneath his collar. As they approached, Emma spotted me and broke into a run, shoes clicking on the porch boards. I scooped her up, inhaling the scent of her hair, her laughter bubbling in my arms. Rachel followed more slowly, Lily cradled against her chest. "Grandma Helen." Emma shrieked, planting sloppy kisses on my cheek. I set her on her feet, and she danced in circles, hands outstretched. Lily cooed softly, wide-eyed and pink-cheeked. Jack laid a gentle hand on my shoulder. "Thank you for having us," he murmured. "It means everything." I smiled, brushing a lock of hair from Rachel's face. "Welcome home." We gathered on the porch swing, Emma perched between Jack and me, Rachel swaying Lily in her arms. A neighbor waved from across the street, "Mr. Harris, I think," and I waved back. The air smelled of honeysuckle and warm asphalt. I lifted the iced tea. "To our first summer together," I said. "May it be full of sunshine and shade when we need it." After breakfast, Jack suggested we tour the garden. He held Lily, pointing out the tulips now towering over her head and the rose bushes heavy with blooms. Emma toddled behind, stooping to inspect ladybugs on a leaf. Rachel knelt to snap pictures with her phone. "These blooms are spectacular," she said. "You've outdone yourself, Mom." My throat caught. "They're all thanks to Robert's soil and a few extra cups of coffee from you," she laughed, draping an arm around my waist. Inside, the house smelled of old wood and fresh linen. I offered to show them the sunroom where I'd laid out art supplies for Emma. She raced ahead, sprawling crayons and paper on the little table. I watched her draw squiggly lines that might have been a tree or a kite and thought about how much she'd grown since last summer. Rachel and I exchanged a glance that said more than words, time moves fast. As midday approached, clouds gathered on the horizon. Jack glanced up. "Storm's coming." I checked the windows, then turned back to them. "Let's eat before the rain." We moved the party back to the kitchen table, setting down cold lemonade and sandwiches. Lightning flickered outside, and the first rumble shook the glass. Emma shrieked in delight and dashed to the window. Boom! Boom! The storm hit in full force, rain whipping against the panes, wind rattling the roof. We huddled around the table, voices raised above the thunder. Lily napped in her car seat on the floor, and Emma leaned against my leg, eyes wide with wonder. Rachel placed her hand on mine. "I've been thinking," she said over the downpour when we move back next winter, "maybe we could take turns hosting holiday dinners here." I nodded the idea, wrapping me in warmth. "I'd love that." Jack raised his glass of lemonade. "To tradition and flexibility," he declared, and we cheered as thunder rolled again. After the storm passed, the air smelled fresh, and the porch needed sweeping. Jack retrieved brooms while Emma chased water droplets on the sidewalk. Rachel helped me carry the cake back to the porch and lit a single candle. "Happy summer," she teased. Emma clapped, and Lily cooed as if in applause. I closed my eyes at the mingled scent of cake and rain-soaked marigolds. That evening, as dusk settled, we gathered in the living room for an impromptu talent show, Emma's favorite game. She performed a dance, flapping her arms like a bird earning cheers. Lily gurgled from my arms with each clap. Jack produced a harmonica and played a lilting tune he'd learned in college, and Rachel sang softly, her voice blending with the breeze drifting through the open windows. I realized then that the house wasn't just witness to our story. It was a participant, the floorboards applauding the walls, echoing our laughter, and the oak tree outside standing guard in the moonlight. Later, after the children were tucked in, Jack and Rachel sat beside me on the porch swing. The night was alive with cricket songs. Rachel leaned into my shoulder. "Thank you for giving us this," she whispered. Jack nodded, eyes reflecting the string lights overhead. "This place, it's more than our anchor. It's our heart." I wrapped an arm around both of them, and my heart is full. Inside, I paused by Robert's portrait, touching the frame gently. "We did it, my love," I whispered. "We built something that lasts." Then I turned off the hallway light and walked down to my bedroom, the soft glow of our family's warmth trailing behind me like a beacon. I drifted to sleep, with a smile certain that our roots and our wings were woven together more beautifully than I had ever dared to hope. The first hint of autumn drifted in on a cool breeze as I stood at the back door, watching Jack and Rachel load suitcases into their car before the school year began. Emma clutched her stuffed rabbit, and Lily nuzzled Rachel's neck, a sleepy smile on her tiny face. I felt a gentle ache in my chest, one that carried both pride and longing. This house, our house, had witnessed so much healing. Now it would send them off again, wings unfurled, rooted always in this place. "Mom," Jack called, voice soft over the hum of the engine. I turned and offered him a wave, stepping out onto the porch to feel the crunch of fallen leaves beneath my slippers. "I'm right here," I replied. He ducked his head, shifting his weight from foot to foot, and then crossed the yard in a few long strides. "Thank you for everything," he said, placing a gentle hand on my shoulder. "For this sanctuary, for believing in me when I was too proud to admit I needed help." I laid a hand over his. "You believed in yourself when it mattered most," I reminded him. He smiled, eyes misting as he looked at his family, Emma waving furiously, Lily gurgling in Rachel's arms. "We'll see you at Thanksgiving," Rachel called from the back seat, voice tinged with excitement and fatigue. I raised a hand in return, throat tight. "Drive safe. And remember, you always have a home here." She blew me a kiss, and the car's brake lights winked as they rolled away down the street. Alone with the quiet, I closed the door and leaned my forehead against the cool wood. Memories of their laughter under the oak tree, the clink of lemonade glasses on the porch swing, and the swirl of cherry blossoms last spring filled my mind. The house felt still without their voices, but it was the kind of stillness that cradles you like a hug squeezed tight before a reunion. Inside, I moved almost on autopilot. I collected the empties from breakfast, wiped down the counters, and stacked the guests' dishes, bathed in the dishwasher. Each task felt like a small testament to the life I'd reclaimed, cooking, cleaning, caring. I paused by the mantel to straighten a framed photo of Emma's first steps on the living room rug. She'd toppled into my arms there, and I'd caught her heart fully alive. I traced the glass with my fingertip and whispered, "Grow well, my love." With the fronts of my sweaters still hanging in the closet, I slipped into a favorite cardigan and headed out to the garden with a pair of pruning shears. The rose bushes were heavy with late blooms, and the tulips had long since retreated underground for winter's rest. I clipped spent blossoms and cleared away dead leaves, feeling the familiar ache in my hands and the steady gladness in my heart. Each cut was a reminder that growth often follows endings. As I worked, my phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from Linda Lunch at noon. "I have news." I wiped my hands on my jeans and returned to the house to change. At noon, we met at our usual booth in Rosie's Cafe, the manager sliding over 2 steaming mugs of soup and warm bread. Linda's eyes were bright as she waved off my offer to pay. "It's on me, friend," she insisted, grinning. "Guess who's coming to town next month?" I raised an eyebrow. "Who?" She leaned in conspiratorial. "Your favorite granddaughter's birthday party, her 5th. Emma wants a princess cake here." She told her teacher all about Grandma's castle. Tears pricked my eyes. "She calls it a castle," I asked, voice catching. "Because you made it her home." She said, "Grandma's house is where I feel brave." I swallowed a lump in my throat. "Tell her she's always welcome to slay dragons in my halls." Linda laughed, eyeing me fondly. "You slay dragons every day, Helen. Don't you forget it." Later that afternoon, back at home, I cleared the bookshelf in the study to make space for Emma's princess storybooks. I dusted each shelf, pausing on volumes of Robert's poetry memoirs I'd read late at night, and family photo albums. I arranged the books by height, then alphabetically exactly how I'd taught Jack when he learned his letters. Beneath them, I placed a basket of plush toys, knights, unicorns, and yes, a stuffed dragon for slaying. The room felt both whimsical and sacred, a haven for imagination and love. As dusk fell, I prepared dinner for 1 baked salmon roasted squash and a crisp salad. I set a single plate on the table, lit a candle, and poured a glass of white wine. At the first sip, I closed my eyes and let the flavors wash over me. I thought of the years I'd nearly lost this home, the sting of betrayal when my own son had cast me aside, and the fierce journey back to dignity and belonging. And here I was, now savored solitude punctuated by visits from the family I'd helped heal. After dinner, I curled up on the couch with a shawl around my shoulders and the final pages of a novel I'd been reading. The wind rattled the windows, and in the distance, I heard the familiar creak of the porch swing in restless anticipation. I closed the book when the clock chimed 10 rose and padded to the back porch, folding the swing's cushions neatly before stepping inside. In the hallway, I paused by the collection of family portraits Robert and me at our wedding, baby Jack yawning in my arms. Jack and Rachel's wedding day. Emma's first birthday. And the family gathered on the porch swing last summer. Each frame told a story of love tested and restored, of roots deepened by trials and wings, strengthened by care. I ran a hand along the row of images, the glass cool under my palm. I thought of tomorrow, of community meetings, on elder rights, of lunch with Mason, to discuss pro bono cases for seniors facing housing disputes, of the holiday planning with Rachel and Jack. My life brimmed with purpose and promise. I turned off the hallway light and climbed the stairs to my bedroom, the photograph of Robert guiding me like a lighthouse in my mind. Lying in bed, I listened to the hum of the heater kicking on the distant traffic on Maple Avenue and the soft whisper of my own heartbeat. I thought of Robert's words from our wedding vow. In sickness and in health, in hardship and triumph, I will stand by you. I realized I'd lived those vows alone and with a family reassembled by courage and love. A satisfied sigh escaped me as sleep tugged at my eyelids. Tomorrow I would wake to new challenges and joys. But tonight I rested in the knowledge that I was exactly where I needed to be, a widow, a mother, a grandmother, a survivor, living in a home that truly belonged to me and the ones I loved. And with that comforting certainty, I drifted into dreams of sunlit gardens, children's laughter, and a life rebuilt stronger than ever before.